The great hall of the stellar Concord Academy shimmered with pale blue lights that reflected off steel pillars rising like metallic trees. Students from dozens of human and allied worlds filled the wide chamber with quiet conversation as they waited for the annual cultural display, a ceremony meant to highlight traditions brought from old Earth and blended with new frontiers. In the center of the room stood a polished performance platform, and on it waited a hybrid instrument that students rarely dared to approach. It resembled a piano forged from polished obsidian, fitted with crystalline keys and thin resonant plates arranged to catch and amplify sound in strange and beautiful ways. Near the far wall stood a girl named Lena. She wore a simple uniform, her hands tucked behind her back, her posture small against the towering pillars around her. Most students ignored her. Some whispered as they passed. A few glanced with mocking amusement, for rumors said she had entered the academy on a maintenance scholarship and spent more time cleaning labs than learning advanced arts. When the class mentors called for volunteers for the instrument demonstration, many assumed she would stay in the shadows, as she always did. That assumption changed when Mentor Hale read the roster. The mentor was tall, with a voice that carried across the hall, even without projectors. He scanned his list and said that each student would present a brief piece on an earth instrument of their choice. Then he called out a name that caused several heads to turn .Lina. A soft wave of chuckles moved across the room. A few students exchanged glances filled with disbelief. Lena blinked in surprise. She had not submitted her name. She had not wished to perform at all. Yet here she was, called by the mentor's steady voice and pushed into the open. By the eyes of everyone around her. She stepped forward with careful movements. Her heart thrummed like a warning signal, and she tried to steady her breath. She could not imagine who had placed her on the list, but she knew she could not refuse. The academy valued courage, and turning away would mark her as timid in a place where boldness meant progress. The mentor gestured to the instrument on the stage. He asked if she wished to play a prepared composition or simply demonstrate a few notes. His tone held no mockery, but others nearby whispered again. A boy near the front shook his head and muttered that she would probably strike random keys. A girl standing beside him said there was no chance she could manage anything on the Concord piano, an instrument so sensitive that even trained performers hesitated to touch it. Lena heard the voices, but did not meet their eyes. She had grown used to such comments. She spent most days repairing small academy devices, testing sensor boards, and cleaning the panels in the music wing. No one had ever asked if she practiced when the halls were empty. No one had noticed the nights when she stayed late, sitting before the silent instrument with her hands resting lightly upon the keys. She had learned it alone because she loved the deep resonance and the wave vibrations traveled across the crystalline plates like ripples across still water. She stepped onto the stage. As she moved, the room grew quiet. The Concord piano reflected the soft lights of the hall in its smooth surface. Lena reached out and touched a key. The instrument came to life with a soft chime as its sensors recognized her presence. She sat on the low bench and took a breath. Mentor Hale stood nearby, but said nothing. He simply nodded for her to begin. Lena placed her fingers over the keys. She remembered the first time she had touched an instrument on old Earth, before her family left for the colonies. That piano had been old and wooden, its sound warm and worn, but it had awakened something in her. Now she felt that memory returned as she began to play. A single note rang through the hall. It was pure and clear. Then a second followed, then a third, each blending with the next in a smooth progression that caused even the whispering students to pause. Lena let her hands move across the keys with a confidence no one expected. The opening melody rose like a slow sunrise. Soft harmonies followed, drifting through the air like the gentle hum of distant engines. The hall fell silent. Every conversation ended. Eyes that had mocked now widened. Lina shifted the rhythm, adding layers that built upon each other in waves. The crystalline plates resonated with faint shimmering light as they vibrated. The hall seemed to shift around her as the melody grew bolder. It carried the quiet pride of old Earth, the resilience of the colonies, and the hope humans carried into the stars. She leaned into the piece she had written in private. It began with simple motifs from Earth's classical traditions, then expanded into patterns inspired by the sounds she heard across the station. The pulse of energy cores, the hum of gravity regulators, and the subtle clicks of translation gates. She had woven these tones into a composition that blended past and future, human memory and cosmic ambition. Students leaned forward. Some had listened to countless performances in their years at the academy, yet none had expected such depth from the quiet girl they barely noticed. The boy who had mocked her earlier now watched with his mouth slightly open. His friend stared as though trying to understand how someone they had dismissed could create something so powerful. Mentor Hall listened with growing admiration. He had taught hundreds of talented individuals, but very few possessed the intuitive sense Lina displayed. Her hands moved in fluid arcs, her posture steady, her expression calm. She played with the confidence of someone who understood not only music, but the silent places where emotion lived. The melody shifted again. This time it took on the vastness of space. Long sustained notes stretched across the hall like the slow drift of starlight. Light from the instrument shimmered upward, catching in the steel surfaces above and casting faint patterns across the room. The audience sat suspended in stillness, drawn into the world Lina created. She continued for several minutes, though no one counted. Time seemed distant. Her final progression descended gently through a series of soft chords. Then the last note rang out, a clear and lingering tone that slowly faded until the hall returned to silence. For a long moment, no one moved. The quiet felt heavy, as though the room itself held its breath. Then the first clap sounded. It came from a student near the back, who rose to his feet with wide eyes. Another followed, then another. Soon the entire hall burst into applause. The sound echoed off the steel pillars and filled the space with thunderous approval. Lina blinked in surprise. She had not expected such a reaction. She stood slowly and stepped back from the instrument. She felt a warmth rise to her face, not from embarrassment, but from the sudden realization that she had been seen. Truly seen. Mentor Hale stepped forward and raised a hand for quiet. The applause faded as he addressed the hall. He said that talent could appear in unexpected places. He said that humility did not reflect ability. Then he turned to Lina and asked where she had learned to play so well. Lina hesitated as the eyes of the entire hall turned to her. She answered simply that she practiced in the empty hours after her duties. She said she had studied old recordings and sheet archives, and that she had listened to the sounds of the station until they became part of her music. The mentor nodded with clear respect. He said her piece carried the spirit of human creativity that had allowed their species to navigate distant galaxies. He said her performance would be archived in the Academy records. Students approached her as she stepped down from the stage. Some offered congratulations. Others apologized for their earlier assumptions. Lina accepted their words with quiet grace. She did not hold resentment. She believed everyone deserved a chance to learn and grow, including herself. As the ceremony continued, the Academy buzzed with conversation about Lina's performance. Those who had doubted her now spoke of her with admiration. Some even requested that she teach them how to navigate the Concord piano. Later that night, long after the hall had emptied and the lights dimmed, Lina returned to the stage. She sat before the instrument again. The room was silent once more, but now it carried a new energy. She touched the keys and let a few soft notes rise into the quiet air. Each tone settled into the space around her like a promise of what she could become. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe that she belonged at the academy not only as a helper, but as a creator. She felt a renewed strength within her. She had shown them the quiet power of human determination. She had shown them that skill could rise from any corner, even from a girl others overlooked. As she ended her short practice, she rose from the bench and walked toward the exit. She paused at the doorway and looked back at the instrument. The soft lights above reflected in its polished surface like distant stars. She smiled, knowing she had found her place among them. She stepped into the hallway with steady steps, ready for the days ahead. The academy would never look at her the same way again. Her music had spoken for her. It had filled the hall with a voice of its own, one that carried strength born from earth and shaped in the vast reaches of space. Lina walked forward with quiet confidence, knowing that whatever challenges waited beyond the academy walls, she would face them with the same resolve that carried her through every note she had played. She knew now that humans thrived not only by exploring distant frontiers, but by nurturing the talents hidden in unlikely places. And so she continued her journey, carrying the melody of her spirit,